this right here is a special moment for me. I'm honored to be able to do this, man, to be sitting here with someone who's affected not just my life, but hundreds, hundreds of lives, and by association, probably thousands of lives. Man, Anthony Servidone, a legend in wrestling as a sport, USA Wrestling, New York Wrestling, a super legend in terms of Section 2 legend in wrestling, and the legend of Columbia Wrestling, one of the most prestigious programs in Section 2 that I have the honor of being a benefactor of, man. Hall of Famer.
Well, I'm going to cut you off because that's too many kind words, but I really thank you for that. That hits the heart. Sure, truly does, Al. So thank you.
And I'm sitting here, man, the ring glistening. Coach, the ring glistening in my face. This ring is the ring for what? Hall of Fame ring?
It was a Hall of Fame ring. That's it's a collective effort from a lot of coaches and athletes like yourself that I have that honor to wear something like that, on a special occasion like this. But
I will say that one of the things that motivated me most to success, and like one of the biggest regrets I have in life, right, is that you did so much for me. We were talking before this started about building rapport with our athletes, right? You did so much for me that it was like, yo, I don't want to just win for myself, right? I want to win for coach. So obviously I wanted to do the honor of become a state champion under you. And I fell short. But talk a little bit about where you discovered that as a coach. You know what I mean? That connection.
That took a lot of years, and it took a lot of learning from my mentors and coaches that were much older than me and had more experience than me. And I think I told you off the record a little bit that when I first started coaching, I took on the role where I had to do everything.
Yeah.
I didn't have to do everything, but that was my attitude. And when I finally reflected back, seeing other programs have success in individuals, I noticed that they had multiple coaches and they allowed those guys to coach.
Do the thing, yeah.
And I learned a lot from that.
So, I mean, it's been how many years? Multiple decades, 20 years of coaching?
Coaching? I've coached since 1988, so it's nearly 3 decades.
Coming up on 30 years, man.
Yeah.
So, from the beginning of the journey, right, what was the first push in the back to being a coach? Taking that first step.
Sure. So I was it kind of fell on my lap, to be honest with you. I was only a junior in college.
Right.
And I just happened to be at the school for a function. And my mom was working at the school at the time. And I was told that the wrestling program was going to be dropped.
Oh, man.
So
this is 1998.
This was 1988.
1988.
Okay. So my mother introduced me to the principal at the time, and he said, "Yeah, we're about ready to drop our program." He goes, "Would you be interested in helping out and coaching the team?" And I said, "Geez, I'm still in college."
Yeah.
I said, "But I am going to Albany, and it's something I might be able to entertain."
Yeah.
So I gave it a shot, as a 20-year-old, and we had 9 kids on the team that year.
Big
so
difference.
it was, it was a long journey to say the least, to get that going. But we were getting killed. We were getting hammered. We were going home early.
Yeah.
So we weren't
talking about wrestling in the matches.
In the matches, we weren't going to the finals.
Oh, yeah.
So it was.
We're winning national championship.
Yeah, that wasn't even a thought.
Nah.
Okay, but we come a long way. Like I said, it was a process. With a lot of coaches involved. Getting the youth program going was key.
Yeah, that is key.
And
continuity.
And finally, those kids came through, and we lengthened our staff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like us, me, Evan. Even guys from other marriage, coach marriage, they come back on.
There's quite a bit. We have a lot of alumni that come back in the room. We have a lot of alumni on staff.
I would say that is a big thing too, because I remember being an 8th grader in about 2009, and I think it was fresh off of Zach Crane's state final season. And I remember being in the auditorium for the award ceremony, and I remember Zach talking to us, and I remember sitting there and being like, I want to be better than him. Like, you know what I mean? I want to get further than him, right?
That's great.
And as I got older and would come back, I always felt the responsibility to come back and talk to the kids and maybe light that fire into the next one. And this brings me to a bigger idea, something I've been thinking about on my personal journey. And it's this idea called the continuum, right? And it's the different generation gaps between the levels of wrestlers, right? So this is another thing I stole from you. This is going to be a running theme. I stole a lot
That's
from
okay.
you.
That's all right.
I stole a lot
That's
from
what it's
you.
about. It's about sharing. It's about, everything that I've taught, someone's taught me, or I've picked it up from somebody else, and that's why you go to camps. That's why you go to clinics. That's why you watch other coaches.
Yeah.
That's why you interact with them.
So the continuum idea is more or less that there's different generation gaps in this journey of wrestling. You got the elder statesmen, like for me and you, I would say that was Joe DeMeo. We'll get into him later, Absolutely. Of course. And then like there was you, it was like an older coach that was delegating, like you said, delegating responsibilities and overseeing things, a little more active. And then it would get put down to, for my time, it was Marriage and Denicio and Ryan French and Flanagan.
Yeah.
The younger guys who are still able-bodied and can bang with the guys in the room, right?
Yeah, everyone has a role. And there's a reason why we had younger coaches in there so they could wrestle.
Yep.
They could show technique. And then we had Coach DeMeo in the room, or Coach McHugh, or Coach Crane.
Cleaning up.
Guys who had great knowledge.
Coaching you, right?
And
still coaching you as a head coach.
Coach DeMeo, was my coach at the club for sure.
No, but I'm saying coaching you as a coach.
Absolutely.
Like I'm sure you went in our personal relationship, I reach out to you for advice on certain things on my journey. And I'm sure Coach DeMeo played that role for you sometimes.
Absolutely did.
Yeah, and even going back, like the Columbia structure, that's where I learned how important it was to teach. Because as a wrestler, I would go to the Pee-wee and be like, nah, do it like this. And maybe I didn't even really know how to do it myself, or maybe I didn't do it. But when I'm showing them, it's like reinforcing it in me.
Yeah, which is good.
So that's the continuum in
Right. And the challenge was, as you a youth, is that everyone learns differently.
Everyone learns differently. You got to think about things.
You can't throw a lot at them. Sometimes you can be quiet. Sometimes you got to be loud. Sometimes you got to be a little physical.
Yeah.
That it varies all over the place.
Got to earn some respect.
It varies from wrestler to wrestler.
Yeah. So on the continuum idea, right? And I don't know if you were doing this consciously, right? If maybe you didn't have the continuum idea in your mind, but you still built it in the structure of your program, right? And having these older guys, and then, the able-bodied, the younger guys, and then us, obviously, and then the Pee-wee program.
Right.
So when did you, like I said, maybe you didn't consciously realize it, but what really made you build the continuity throughout your program?
Well, that's a great question. That's almost not a difficult question to answer, but it's going to be a little long. Just like I said, I think I realized that in order to have a successful program, first of all, it's a process.
Yeah.
Not one person is going to make an individual or a team championship. It's just not going to happen.
Very true.
So if you have the opportunity to go out and seek the best coaching staff that you can possibly get, why not do it?
Yeah.
And we started to do that as a staff. I know Jim McHugh, we got Joe McCabe over. Yeah. I got Joe DeMeo over. Mm-hmm. My high school, my high school best buddies was Bob Crane. So we just built from there.
That is another thing I want to, stop before I go any further. Now that you bring up Coach Crane, that is one of the unsung heroes of the Columbia program.
Absolutely. And he got recognized this year for it being in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
Someone said to me, geez, I can't believe an assistant coach is in a Hall of Fame. And I said, well, look at the Columbia Wrestling program, right? We're not built on one person.
No.
You don't know what Coach Crane does because maybe his name's not in the paper or he's not driving the car, but, he does a lot.
Every operation needs that guy, though.
There's no question.
Every Jordan needs a Pippin.
As a former wrestler in our school, you know the value of Coach Crane.
Yeah, and the proof's in the pudding. What he did with Zach, and not just him, but he was in there banging with Evan on the daily, and I still see him in there banging with Tommy, banging with the kids.
Yeah,
like
every day.
that midweight, 130 to 170.
He's there. He's wrestling
Still.
Age doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
He's out there, and and we brought I brought Coach Lapp in for you.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I know you must have been looking at. Listen, and I'm sure many people watching this already know my story and know me, but man, the me now was me in 12th grade, right? I look pretty much the same. I was just
12th grade. How about 8th grade?
How about 8th?
Right here.
There's no A class, man. First 8th grader made 1,000-pound club. But you speaking to your delegation ability, right? You seen me, you knew what you were sitting on, and you were able to not only just recognize the need that somebody's got to train with this monster I got, this chained animal I have in my room.
And I delegated myself to be out.
You delegated yourself to be out, and you brought in Brandon Lapp, who is now a staple in the program.
Yes, he is.
right? So I mean, since we can do this to like jump into our personal connection and our story together over the years. As I came in, I remember Coach Marriage pulled me out of detention. He said, you want detention or you want to wrestle?
Just once, right?
Just once or twice, man. You want detention, you want to wrestle. And I wrestled and I tried it out and I liked it. You know, I took a lot of
true, but you know, as you know, as being a wrestler, and a student at the time, getting out of trouble, wrestling definitely gave you discipline.
Yeah, discipline.
And wrestling is a disciplined sport.
And an outlet, discipline, big. Yeah. We have, in being a part of something greater, man, we have this tagline that you still say, and I still say, but Columbia Wrestling, expect to win.
On and off the mat for life.
For life, right? And that's etched into all of us, right?
And I got that text today from Dylan Dubuque.
Right?
Absolutely.
Shout out to Dylan Dubuque, another product of greatness, right? But you know, I came in the program and maybe talk a little bit about like what you saw, maybe.
With what in particular?
When I came in.
When this guy came in, wow, we I think our whole staff couldn't believe you were in 8th grade to begin with, and we just knew that the future was bright for sure. Had you stick with it.
Yeah.
You know, and you did. I think you fell in love with the sport.
I did. And the team and the family.
And the team, absolutely. And so family is one of the biggest things you just said on. I mean, we that's our culture at Columbia, and you know that.
Yeah, I know that.
We've created that as a collective group over the years. And that's certainly strengthened us. You know, everyone gets behind everybody. You show up at practice some days, and you know you're coming out of detention, or some kid's coming out of getting had a bad relationship with his girl, and they're having a bad day at practice. But you know, our team brought them up.
Yeah, I mean, as a family, we've been through it all. We've been through criminal cases, the kids getting in trouble.
I don't know anything about that. But
fights. We've been through it all, man. In Columbia Wrestling.
I'll wait 10 years to tell me this now.
Yeah, right. We all stuck together, man, as a family. And like for me, you know, we're talking about my journey with the program. And, you know, we started to get closer as I got to maybe that 10th grade season is where I finally accepted wrestling.
That's where your commitment level changed.
Changed, right?
There's no question. I think when you got involved in making the sport from 4 months to 8 months to 12 months is really where you made your leaps and bounds.
Made my leaps and bounds. And
when I seen that in you, that's when I said, I'm taking you under my wing.
Exactly. And that's what I want to get into next. We spent, I think, a lot of that summer, man. You were the coach of the New York State junior team. I think it might have been that summer or the next one. And we spent a lot of time that year traveling with the Virginia Beach, me, you, and Angelo, Mr.
Daytona.
Morgan,
Daytona for the cadet duels. We went to Fargo more than once. We went all over.
We went all over.
And that's what it takes.
I think, especially for a kid like me at the time, right, where I wasn't used to getting commitment from the levels above me. Just seeing that level of commitment from you is what made me fall in love with the wrestling, even because you know, I was a football player.
Yeah.
And as you get older,
you were a multiple sport athlete,
but you have to make decisions with your time.
And you did
as it gets closer. You see what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
And the big reason I made that decision was the amount of commitment I got back from the program. Right.
And that says a lot about our Columbia Wrestling program.
As a family,
I certainly appreciate that's being your former coach.
But as you know, especially with me, it wasn't all cherries and vanilla and ice cream, right? I remember one particular time we were having a dual meet tournament, and man, I got in my feelings. I got my 100th win in Madison Square Garden. That's another thing.
How awesome was that?
That was awesome, but we did some awesome things, right?
How awesome was that?
But as you know, man, Columbia goes above and beyond. We'll move into this part next, but you know we do the 100-win thing. And I didn't get my 100th win. A teammate got his 100th win at the duels, and they stopped it. And I got in my feelings, man. And I quit on the team, and it was tough to deal with.
That was certainly nothing personal. I just think that was a matter of probably someone not knowing your wins or not having your banner ready.
Right.
You know, if you were in business, we would have had it. We would have had it ready. But fine print would have had it all done. Signed, sealed, and delivered.
Yes, Coach Servidone, man.
But you know me, I'm not about the awards. I mean, I'm not about that. I'm really about what you guys have become.
Yeah,
really. And our practice time was about, if you remember correctly, we didn't call our wrestler. That was our office.
Office time. We were locked in. But back to that story, man, what I appreciate, because at the time, like, what, it's probably, I don't know if I was a senior, had to be a senior. I was probably ranked first in the state. I was probably ranked top 10 in the country. And a lot of programs would be at the helm of those type of kids, right? Oh, sorry, L, da, 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 da. And it would have really been doing me a disservice as a man, like you said, not just as a wrestler, as a team, but as a man. And even me at the time, like, you allowed me a path back in, but I had to take responsibility.
You absolutely did. You got to earn your way back.
You got to earn your way back.
And you guys know how I feel about rankings. I wasn't big on what someone else's opinion was about rankings. That's because I knew what you guys were. Our coaching staff knew what you guys were. I didn't care what the newspaper said or what Wrestling News said about it. The biggest thing was your ranking was when you were on that podium, that number underneath you.
Yeah.
That's the true ranking.
Yeah, it's very true. But, like I said, we had our ups and downs as a program and a family, but that's every family, right?
Yeah,
and that's what makes us family.
We certainly did. That's we face adversity.
Yeah.
We found ways to get through it.
Yeah, literally.
We did. And sometimes there was fist fights. There was no question. And I gotta be honest with you, as a coaching staff, we probably let it go a little bit further sometimes, but at the end of the day, it was the right thing.
It's the right thing, man, because we built together, and our relationships are still constant to this day, and that's the evidence of it.
I love seeing it.
Right? You see these kids. Some kids reached out to me.
Some kids. I mean, look at your last several fights that you had.
Oh yes.
I mean, I've never seen so much Columbia wrestling apparel at Rivers Casino in my life. Which is great.
Well, let's talk about that, because Cage Wars is the local fight promotion that I fight for, and there is a unusual Columbia wrestling alumni presence in that promotion. What about Columbia wrestling do you think? Maybe this is an advertisement for Cage Wars, but leads kids to the cage.
This is your professional environment now.
There's like maybe 10 fighters from Columbia wrestling, man.
Which is great. Yeah, I don't know. I think you broke the barrier there with your success.
I don't even think it was me, man.
And your fan base. I think everyone wants to be El Shaddai.
Yeah,
that's true. And it's great to see. It's great when I went to one of the fights and there was like 4 or 5 former Columbia wrestlers on the card.
Yeah,
that was fantastic.
That in and of itself, I'm sure as a coach, you got to be like, wow.
It was great. It was great talking to people in the stands there, and said it should be an honor for you. And I said, it certainly is, win or lose. I said, just great to see these guys out there compete.
Well, I mean, we've had our ups and downs watching me compete, but let's talk about some of the ups and downs of just your coaching career in general. Like, let's talk about some of the highlights.
Well, we can start with our league. Our league was competitive. We had a team Shenandoah, and that was basically untouchable. We were a premier team, and they were a team that.
I gotta stop you because there's one moment about us. Right? I don't know if you remember this, but speaking of Shen, right? It was especially when I was around, it was a rivalry.
It was a great rivalry.
You both had about 5 section champs on the opposing teams, right?
It was great. I mean, Coach Weeks does a great job there.
Do you remember the week before you wrestled Shen? I think my senior year, I had a really bad stomach bug, right? And you were like, "El Shaddai, champions practice through sick pain or whatever." And then we had the wrestle Shen the next day. The next day, everybody, including you, were pooping their brains out, throwing up, man.
We had an unfortunate night that night, and no excuses. Yeah, we had to wrestle the mats regardless of what physical condition we were in.
No matter whose singlet was getting filled with something other than blood and sweat.
I'm glad I wasn't around that, but that's trainers are very well, and they did a good job there. But yeah, that was a night I think we forgot quickly, and we got back on track as soon as we were healthy.
That's what it's all about. But let's keep moving on with some of your highlights. That's a story I always tell. I can't forget. I can't let you forget that story either.
No, I remember that. Trust me, I remember that. I remember that before we hit the mat that night.
You're like, man, I should have listened.
There's 1 guy, 2 guys, 3 guys, 4 guys, and I was like, wow, we're gonna have to figure this out.
But I practiced that day, though.
Yeah, you had to.
I had to.
There was no out.
There was no out. You expect to win on mat for life. But let's talk about some other highlights. Like you said, our league,
our league, you're a former wrestler in the league. So the league was, just to get out of the league was competitive, which was great, so that really prepped us for class tournament, for section 2 tournament, and for the state tournament, and for when you went to nationals. Yeah. You wrestled just in your own league in the Capital District. The Suburban Council was unbelievable.
I mean,
look at you. One year you wrestled somebody from Shen in the state semifinal
In the state.
in your own league.
I got third in the section that year.
Right.
And second in the state.
Right. Section 2 sent 3 guys that year.
Yeah. And heavyweight.
So I mean, it tells you the depth of our section was incredible, in particular our league.
Yeah.
So that was always a challenge, you know. Then the other challenges were obviously putting lineups together, matchups, you know, and finding kids. Sometimes we were thin in certain weight classes. You know, that was always a challenge. It wasn't really a challenge to get a big guy because we always seemed like we had a big guy factory.
Yeah, big guy factory.
You know, we really did. It was always trouble getting the lightweight guys.
Yeah, that's the hard part.
Them guys making weight and committing to the sport. You know, and it's, you know wrestling. It's 4 months during probably the hardest time of the year. Not hardest time of the year, but you go November through February.
Christmas.
You know, you got Christmas, you got Thanksgiving, you got a lot of things there.
Yeah,
Winter break.
Yeah,
so it's a sacrifice and a commitment.
Yeah, it is a sacrifice commitment. One of the things about the Columbia program that you were very good at is giving us throughout the season, right, things to look forward to on the mat in terms of competing. Like we spoke on it earlier, but we were at the inaugural Grapple at the Garden tournament, which you had 2 champions in, right? Was it 2, maybe 3? Me and Angelo, I know for sure, won it.
Yeah, there could be more. I don't remember.
There could be more. Yeah. We were good that year.
That was good. It was
we
a
would
good
go
year.
to Florida. What was it? The KSA duels?
With the KSA duels. The same year we did that. We did the Grapple in the Apple. We did the KSA duels in Orlando, Florida, and we did the Virginia duels, which at the time, probably still is, was the hardest dual meet tournament in the country.
Yep. And we were able to win it one year. I was on that team.
Yeah, we won it in 2011.
Yep, 2011.
That's correct.
I remember one year at the Virginia duels when I was maybe.
There we go. This is the famous one. You got to tell this story.
As a 10th grader, man, they were sending me out and they were bumping me up. I was like a pawn sometimes. I'd be put in the lineup wherever was convenient. I was in 8th grade, I think. And I was
you were versatile. You could wrestle multiple weight classes. We knew you could handle it.
They put me out against this dude who he just got out of the prison or NFL, man. We were calling him Jamaican Superman. And coach was like, yo, can you wrestle him? And I was like, I guess. But that's what you've seen at Virginia duels, man. You would see some.
That's what you wanted. You want to see good comp.
Top line athletes. I remember you guys sent me out, speaking on using me as a sacrificial lamb. I remember you guys sent me out versus, what was his name? He was from Shen, a really good Maze.
Oh, the mazes are very good.
Yes, they sent me out against one of the mazes. But I was always winning, though. I'll go out there.
If you can go out and compete with them, you can compete with the best.
Compete with the best. Man, so throughout this journey, man, it's taken you across the world, right? It's cultivated some of your deepest and most enriching relationships, right? It's given you a sense of fulfillment, I would say. What do you think, if anything, is the number one thing you've taken from this journey?
Wow, there's so much in this sport. You know, you look at the relationships you have developed over the years and the amount of people you've met. You know, it's really shaped my life.
Yeah.
You know, when I first started coaching, I was in college not to be a teacher.
Yeah.
So when I got the coaching job, that wrestling shaped me to change my career. You know, my career path, and I became a teacher because of the sport of wrestling. So that was huge.
Let's talk about, because, you know, I know we talk so much about the wrestling and you retiring as a wrestling coach, but there's a whole other section of people who you've affected that will talk about you as a teacher, because you were a gym teacher for Columbia for a long time. And maybe speak about that and the relationship between that and wrestling, a relationship between that.
Yeah, it was great.
And
You know, I had the opportunity to be a teacher in the East Creamer Central School District. You know, I taught when I first started. You know, it's difficult at the time. It was difficult to get a full-time job or take over a full-time position at the high school. So I was at 2 elementary schools and the high school. Yeah. So I was kind of a traveling PE teacher. And then I think by my 3rd or 4th year, I was full-time at the high school. So that all played part into coaching. You know, so you teach during the day, would recruit during the day. You know, you kind of, you know, you got some kids that are challenged and you know that wrestling would be a good sport for them. Mm-hmm. You know, somebody like, why do you want this kid to wrestle? I said, you know what? He's crawling right now, but by the time December comes around, he's going to be able to walk. By the time January comes around, he's going to be able to run. Yeah. And that's what you really want to see. Mm-hmm. And that's the progress that really makes you feel good about a coach, you know, coaching-wise.
Coaching-wise, you know, I agree. As me being
Absolutely.
at the beginning of my coaching journey, I can really relate to that. I take the most pride in the kids that came a long way, not the kids
Right,
who
you
got
see
there
that a
already.
lot, right?
Yeah.
And that's great, especially in dual meets. You know, you'll see when you start getting into coaching now. When you're trying to win a dual meet and you got 13 or 15 weight classes, you know the other team's roster. You know who's good. So you got to figure out where you're going to score bonus points.
Yeah.
You know you're going to lose some matches.
Right.
So you're going to say, hey, like El Shaddai's got to hang with this kid tonight. He can only give up 3.
Yeah, I remember.
He can't get majored. He can't get teched. He can't get pinned. If he does, we got to make it up somewhere else.
I remember
you know?
the meetings.
So,
Do you remember? I was in 10th grade. We were wrestling Shen, of course. And we were doing the meeting, and you were like, yo, it was against Colem and a foe I've seen many times. And you're like, yo, you can't get pinned here. And then I was like,
and that was a rookie mistake on me. I shouldn't say rookie. I should have never said you can't get pinned.
you said you're like, yo, you can't get
you
pinned.
got to go out and compete. That's. I hate to say that. That word, don't get pinned. But
It wasn't just you, but it was
right.
the group. It was the
right.
meeting. You know the meetings we used to have, especially those years we were competitive.
Right.
We'd go on the chalkboard for the match. We'd be like, all right, this week we're gonna put you here at 35, and then I just remember thinking in my head, like, you know me. I was like, me, don't get pinned. All right, I'll say I got something for him. He went out there, he shot a double, and the double was so deep. He was too deep in on me. I just flipped him, pinned him.
Yes, that's a 12-point swing.
Yeah,
that's huge in wrestling, and that happens.
It happens.
That's it certainly does. As a coach, I've been on both ends of it. You know that.
I remember Corey Southard was wrestling versus Shen again, and he got stuck, pinned. Remember he broke the door?
Yeah, he broke the door. We got the bill.
We got the bill.
But Corey turned it around that year and won the section.
Yeah.
So that was fantastic.
So man, I mean,
as you know, any given night, anybody can be beat.
Anybody.
It's mindset.
Mm-hmm.
It's it's a will to win. Yeah. My will against your will, and who's going to win.
So we were talking earlier about like your relationship with the coaching and the teaching and recruiting, right? So as you as a coach, right, and I was in this position before. What do you see in a kid that makes you be like, oh yeah, he's great for wrestling. I want him on my team. I want him to be part of the program, or I can work with him.
Yeah, you can see their work. You can see their general work ethic. They're not lazy. They're determined. They have a strong mindset. Yeah. You can just pick that up. Yep. You really can.
I can pick it up. I feel
it's just almost a feel thing. It's it's not so much visual.
Yeah.
But if you have a good rapport with someone, talking to them,
Yeah.
And then when they come to practice, and if you see it even more,
yeah.
I got this guy.
I like this
guy.
We
got this guy. He's gonna compete. And when he loses, and if he takes it the wrong way and he wants to come back and train harder the next day, you really got him.
Really, yeah. Yeah, those are the guys. I don't know if you remember, there was a kid that was on my senior team, Chris Morrissey, who only wrestled for 2 years, I think.
One of the finest wrestlers we've ever had.
Imagine we had him for 4, man. But he made it from never wrestling, never being on varsity in his first season to the section finals.
Right. So that's a product of our room, as you know. So, I mean, a guy like Chris Morrissey, who went on to be a class champion, a sectional finalist, he was a JV wrestler for probably 3 out of the 4 years in high school.
I think he only wrestled 2 years.
2 years. No, he wrestled all 4, but he was a JV guy. But remember, he was behind some really good guys. Angelo Crest, Evan Wallace. So those were fantastic guys he had in the room. If he was in somebody else's room, he'd probably be a starter.
Yeah, definitely.
But look how well he did his junior and senior year.
Yeah, he was stuck behind Adrian's, Evan, Angelo.
Yep. Some really good guys.
We had murderers.
That's what makes a good room.
Yeah, and I felt like our room, having those good guys in those room who were taking their wrestling seriously and holding their teammates accountable and to a standard, brings up the floor.
There's no question.
Which in turn rises the ceiling.
Right, which we had that every day, especially during your tenure there, your 4 years.
Yeah.
You were very fortunate to be around a lot of good wrestlers that wanted it.
Yep.
And worked hard.
And a lot of good heavyweights too. I caught the tail end of Garrett Mildoff. Luke Guild was a good heavyweight for us.
And Luke came out of nowhere. Yeah. So did Garrett. Garrett came out as a junior. He never wrestled before until he was a junior.
5th in the state.
His senior year, he was 5th in New York State. He was 45-0 going into the Section 2 finals his senior year. He got beat, but he came back as a wild card and placed 5th, which is fantastic.
But he probably, what was it, John Acorst that probably did it to him?
I don't remember who he lost to.
Not John, probably Ken Alterac, huh?
No, it wasn't him. I don't know offhand.
There's a lot of good guys.
Pushing my brain now on that one.
So, man, let's talk about like some of your inspirations as a coach. I know earlier we brought up Joe DeMayo. I had the fortune of being affected by a worldwide legendary coach in Joe DeMayo.
Yeah. So, when I was in high school, we didn't have a deep team. We did have some good coaches, but we didn't have a lot of like the room that you have. Like you had a lot of good partners. Yeah. So actually, Coach Crane and I would go to the wrestling club called Atwell, which was run by Joe DeMayo, which was the legendary coach at SUNY Albany. Before that, he was at a lot of good Division I colleges. But at that time was a huge amount of Greco-Roman wrestlers training at UAlbany because of Coach DeMayo.
Right.
I mean, Jeff Blatnick, Andy Sears. I can go on and on. Sean Sheldon, a former Columbia wrestler. So those rooms were elite. Yeah. So the amount of wrestlers that are in that room and the coaching was just phenomenal. Mm-hmm. So, a lot of that rubbed off on me, and I got to know Coach DeMayo really well.
Right.
And
yeah, of course,
long-time friendship with him, and to have him on our staff was just kind of unheard of, because Joe's tenure as a coach was worldwide, coaching world teams, assistant coach on Olympic teams. He coached at Stanford University.
Yeah. And he's the progenitor of every wrestling organization in this area.
Yeah, Coach,
it all leads back that way.
He's just legendary.
It all leads back that way.
We could have a lengthy conversation on Coach.
Yeah, you can trace it all back. Absolutely. I do it sometimes. We all trace it, chases back to DeMayo, man. And, for you to bring him in and have him affect so many of your kids' journey, man, is another speak to you're able to recognize. I think when I look at, what made you really great as a coach, right? Being a man of thought and a culture, even, some would say, is I look at your ability to recognize opportunity and connections and then, and oversee, but not overstep, right?
Correct. That's dead on. It's very accurate.
And talk about towing that line, because that's a hard line for a lot of people to toe.
It is, but I think, as I got older as a coach, and I'm not old, hope you don't think I'm older, I became an older coach, and, I think,
you're at the top of the continuum.
I started thinking a lot more and just utilized the staff as best as we could to make it a good fit.
Right. And so, obviously, this is a long form piece of content to kind of wrap up this journey and just talk about it and look back and reflect and build on it, right? So, let's talk about moving forward, because it's just because we're wrapping up it's just another chapter closing, right? Where do you see yourself involved with the sport and Columbia program as a whole moving forward?
Okay, well, one of the reasons why I've decided to move on is I felt that 30 plus years was enough. Yeah. And it became the bar has been set so high that the way I think is that it had to have 12 months in it. You had to put 12 months into the sport, and I don't want to cheat kids because I don't have that. I no longer have that drive. Yeah. And I want to be all in or out. So I think it's time for some new blood. Yeah. And I think what we have in place is fantastic. Yeah. And I think it will continue and it will grow.
Yeah, me too. I agree. As somebody who will ensure that it grows and continues, man, I do agree. Because, like I said, this system and program has done so much for me that, like I said, part of the continuum is, you're incomplete until you fulfill your role at each stage, right? And that's what brought me back into it. It was like, you deny it, you leave it, but you're like, man, it's something. You get in it, once you get a little tail, I'm going to just go check a dual meet out. Right. Hey, you see a kid that reminds you of you. For me, right now, it's Tanner. You see a kid that wrestles like him, and you're like, dang, he reminds me of me. You see him at the end of the match, you're like, yo, bro, let me just show you.
The wrestling will never leave you.
It never leaves you.
Yeah, it just never will. It's just, I look forward, especially this year, going to watch college wrestling, going to watch high school wrestling, in the stands or wherever it may be, or on the side. But no, it's going to be a different, an outside view of wrestling for me this year.
Well, we talk about, you as a coach and, as a staple in the community somewhat, but let's talk about you as a wrestling fan, because what maybe a lot of people don't know who don't know you well is that you are a wrestling fan too. Like, you enjoy the sport genuinely, not just as a coach, A lot of coaches can't say the same thing.
No, I love the sport. I certainly love college wrestling. I love going to the NCAAs every year. That's, to me, that's better than Christmas. You know, I love my family, and I always will. But I think after that, it's going to the NCAA tournament. You know, I went right behind you. I went to the World Championships with Coach DeMeo when it was in Las Vegas.
Multiple times.
You know, you can see one of the tags. I was there.
I see it right here, man. The World Championship.
So that was fantastic to go to that. You know, and then the Olympics are going to be here in 2028. You know, and then we got two outstanding wrestling clubs here in Journeyman and Kirby Freestyle, you know, local right now. Place, and you guys are coming up with Clever.
We're doing our thing.
You know, which is great. Clever but they have, you know, they've provided some fantastic tournaments. Journeyman's brought in.
Headlock on the Hudson.
Yeah, but he's brought in. To speak with Journeyman first, they brought in a lot of the college level teams here, a lot of Northeast duels, which was absolutely fantastic.
I remember the inaugural tournament they had at
Hudson Valley.
Hudson Valley.
Yeah, it was fantastic.
Clay Guida was there. You remember that?
Was, yeah. Frank Propolizio brings a lot of people in. Joe Usolini. You know, look what he's done with a headlock on the Hudsons. You know, you got thousands of people there, which is fantastic.
Staple in the community.
You know, it's awesome. So it's great to see.
And you've, you know, I'm young, but not that young, and I've seen both those clubs mature over the years, and you've poured a lot into both of those clubs.
Yeah, and if you remember correctly, some people, some teams or some areas will focus on going to one club or saying you can only go to this club exclusively. I always let you guys make a choice. You know, some wrestling was better than no wrestling. You know, so I know that you went in high school. You wrestled with Jeff Lamont at Titan.
TNT.
And we had a good contingent there, and we also had a real good contingent at Journeyman as well. So we kind of had a split team there with club wise, but
it helped us.
Didn't really matter. You know, when it came to wrestling season, we were Navy blue and white.
Yeah,
you know, we were Columbia High School.
And I remember being like, "Yeah, man, on the podium, you wear your Columbia gear because that's what it's about."
Yeah, I was stickler about that.
And especially back then. Back then, it was different times. Like, it was war back then.
Yeah. Now, you know, during high school season, you represent your school.
Yeah, you do represent your school. It was war.
When it's club season, you represent your club.
And, you know, like I said, me starting my journey as a club coach, right? What do you think, and this is me asking the question for me, but also for anybody watching this, maybe parents or future wrestlers, like, what do you think a club should provide for their kid? They're a member of their club.
Being a coach, you mean? What you should provide?
We'll start just as the club. Like, what should their kid be able to receive from the club? Like, what's the number one benefit? The benefits.
The benefits should be, you know, the private coaching that you're giving them.
Yeah.
You know, the relationship that you're going to have with that individual.
Lifetime.
You know, which is great. You know, what you're going to be able to provide for them as far as opportunities, for bringing them to tournaments. You know, and having some your skill set practices that you have a couple of days a week, that goes big. You know, you follow up with your kids, whether you call them on the phone or you're texting them. That goes a long way.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so that's really good. You know, if one of your wrestlers has a tough defeat during the season, you know, you're on the phone with them the next day or maybe right after the match. You know, after the match is over, you talk to his coach. You're going there and talking to him as well and giving him a support system. That's really the biggest thing is a support system.
Yeah,
a club during the high school season serves as an additional support system.
I will build it on that, man. One of my club coaches, I was I'll say the last TNT guy with Mike Paquette. And speaking on that match, state semis, going to the state finals, Coach Paquette was at the time on the floor. I think he was coaching for Niskayuna, maybe.
Yeah, he was at Niskayuna. Yeah.
And he came up to me, speaking on that, like, you know, as a community, he came up to me, he's like, you know, I was watching footage on your match versus Landman, and he just circles to your lead leg and shoots. He's like, just switch your lead leg and cut him off.
See, somebody pick something up for you. That's great. That's your support system.
You know what I mean? That's what it's all about.
Which is really good.
Yeah, I kind of take that into my thing. But, you know, you were never too, like you said, you weren't involved in one club too much, but you were a steady, you know, you were on us all off season about wrestling and competing.
That goes back to, you know, being all in. That's 12 months, you know. So it's like you're in or you're out. So whatever club you're representing didn't matter to me.
Yeah.
Because I knew that you as an individual and your teammates were committed to the sport and committed to our program.
So I remember when I was coming up, it was like, yo, you want to get matches in the offseason, get mat time. And the season I made the jump, I got like over 100 matches in the offseason. Talk about that relationship for a wrestler and getting those matches.
Yeah, that's big. And I think if you remember correctly, the first thing I said it was about getting a number of matches, not wins and losses. I could care less if you went 0 and 100. Get the mat time, wrestle, go wrestle different areas of the state, of the region, of the country, and that's that was the key to success.
Yeah.
Making that commitment and wrestling that many matches and different styles, which you did.
Which I
You
did.
did all 3 different styles.
I just followed whatever you.
No, we always had a plan at the end of the year. We basically made a booklet for you guys and gave you a schedule. And
I just followed the.
We kind of split our staff up, so everyone didn't have the opportunity that I had, being primarily single most of my life. And I had I married wrestling, so I was able to travel and they'll pick you guys up and put you on planes and buses and trains. We went everywhere. We flew together. We stayed in hotels together. I was fortunate enough to have that time to do that.
Yeah, and use your resources to help us get to these tournaments and stuff. Absolutely. I remember one time we were going to the Florida tournament and we had to stop downstate. And you were like, yeah, my brother's got a house. We can get here for Airbnb. I was like, oh, word. Servidone well connected. So, talk about, maybe that space wrestling's filled in your life. Like you said, being primarily single, man, and, being able to take kids, like I said, other than a coach, I can look at you as also your father.
I appreciate that.
I feel very comfortable saying that. And even when I talk,
likewise.
This year I had the pleasure of you meeting my actual dad. As you know,
first time.
I grew up. My dad was in prison, and you served a lot of that father figure role for me. And so when I got to see you guys meet, it was really, really nice for me, man. Talk about
So my life journey with wrestling was that I was single and didn't have kids, and it just allowed me to be 100% into the sport. Yeah, and that's why I felt that I could give everything I had to it, and bring every athlete I coached to any event. Give them everything I had throughout the season, off season, whatever it took.
Yeah, but what do you think that did for you?
What it did for me, it was a sense of enjoyment. It was a sense of an accomplishment. It was great to see young men grow into men. Yeah. And become. And do this. We've got some guys that are doing really well outside of they're guys are some of you guys are married and have kids and
rocket scientists.
We're all over the place, which is good.
Yeah, and we're doing this, man. I'm a product of it right here. We're live in full effect, man. I'm a product of the legacy, and we're sitting here in the legacy room, man. And as I look around, I was fortunate enough to be a part of a lot of these moments, man. A lot of these moments. Like I said, I feel like my time there was one of the brightest times in Columbia wrestling history. And, when we were talking about doing this, I was like, I can't imagine anywhere else other than this, being surrounded by the evidence of the legacy, right?
Yeah, I guess that's how you can put it. But, it's definitely a showcase, but, it was earned by all of you. This isn't me. This is a group of a lot of athletes and coaches, that made this happen. And, but regardless of what's on these walls is irrelevant to me. I mean, it's just seeing individuals outside of the sport and becoming just fine, great people. And having those relationships, man. I know I can call anybody at any time. You guys would be there, and I would be there for you as well.
Yeah, literally, it's proof. And moving forward, giving it to the next ones up because it doesn't end with us.
No, it's great. And like I said, we have alumni back in the room now. We have potential alumni taking over our programs. It's fantastic.
So, with that being said, moving forward into the the Columbia in the future and your life in the future, man. What's next for you?
I think it's going to be a good challenge. It's another challenge that I think wrestling has prepared me for. You never know what's going to happen. Yeah. So I think that what's next for me is going to be one day at a time, one practice at a time, right?
One day at a time, one practice at a time. Man, Coach Servidone, like I said, just to wrap this thing up, man, and tie it in a nice bow, the effect you've had on me personally, and I'm going to speak for myself first, me personally, is insurmountable. You can't put words to it or effect to it, man. All I can just say is thank you, and that feels like a shortcoming, or it feels like not enough, and all I can say is I will continue to pour into the next and keep what you built alive, man. Keep it strong moving forward. what you've done for East Greenbush as a town, Columbia Wrestling as a program, Columbia High School, and everything, man, it will never be forgotten. It'll be passed on forever. You deserve that ring. You deserve more than the ring, man. I'm proud to be a product of the system and of the great man, Coach Servidone. With that being said, man, I'm excited to see what goes forward.
I thank you for the heartful, kind words too. I really do. It's just something that I'll always have for a lifetime for sure. You know, and again, I enjoy watching you compete now. It's great. I love being a spectator. You know, it's the pressure's off of me now, which is good. But we'll see how long that lasts.
Yeah, we'll see how long it lasts, man. Because if I know one thing about Coach Servidone, man, he never goes away. He's always going to be there.
It's going to be the challenge.
Yeah, send him the text. Somehow he's kept my number throughout the years.
You always seem to surface.
I know. We always seem to meet paths, but that's the great minds think alike, man. Like I said, this is a father figure, man, to say the least. So, with that being said, man, we're gonna end it here, and we're gonna just relish in a legendary career, man.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
And thank you for being a part of it. You know, I can't say enough.
Thank you, Coach. That's it. Cut.
Cool.
Pardon me.